This is an important offseason for the Chicago Blackhawks as they look to get back toward playoff contention. But there are a lot of rumors going on as to what they're going to do at the draft. Jack Bushman of Locked On Blackhawks is here to talk about that and an important offseason next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blackhawks, Jack Bushman. And Jack, I got to say, the Blackhawks are at the center of a lot of talk here as we are less than a week away from the draft. They have the third pick overall. And the big question on everybody's minds, do they keep it or do they trade it? What's the latest that you've heard?
Well, Gil, first, just want to say thank you for having me back on the show. Always enjoy getting together to talk Blackhawks hockey. That's going to be a fascinating question over these next, 5-6 days leading up to the NHL draft. As that rumors dropped, the Blackhawks could be open to trading back. But as I've kind of talked through on my show, Gil, it sounds like they'd only be interested in doing that for a young player that could come in, fits with the age range of the young group they have on the scene right now. Probably a forward is what they'd be looking at. Since that's kind of their biggest area of need at this point in time. And I think it's going to be hard to find exactly what they're looking for in order to make it work. So it could happen. I'm not going to put it past GM Kyle Davidson. I just think it's one of those deals that's easier said than done to truly get what they're looking for. But hey, I said that same thing about trading Seth Jones prior to the trade deadline, and they obviously got that deal done and worked well for the Florida Panthers as he helped them win the Stanley Cup this year, of course. So yeah, I could see it going both ways, just because it is a really interesting position for the Blackhawks at number 3. It's really wide open at that point in the draft, and if they can get another player, maybe trade down a few picks and still come away with a high-end prospect, I think Kyle Davidson would like to do that. We'll see if it actually winds up happening, though, Gil.
So give me an example, of a player that they would kind of be looking at. Obviously, it could be any number of players, but give me an example.
Yeah, I think the name that comes to mind immediately is JJ Purka from the Buffalo Sabres. There's been some rumors on him over the last couple of weeks that he's not really happy with how things have been going with the Buffalo Sabres. He's due for a new contract as an RFA. There have been some rumblings around him potentially getting offer sheeted on July 1st. So could be JJ Purka going to the Blackhawks, as he does fit that young age range and would bring some much needed skill on the wing to the Blackhawks top 6. And they do have the 9th overall selection in this year's draft. So maybe that is a spot where the Blackhawks acquire Purka in number 9, send number 3 to the Buffalo Sabres. However, from what I've heard, it sounds like the Buffalo Sabres want someone who will help them win right here, right now, in replace of JJ Purka. And I just don't know who necessarily fits that role for the Chicago Blackhawks. Maybe, someone like Teuvo Teravainen or Ilya Mikheyev, but those guys have no trade clauses in their contracts. And given it's been 14 years since the Buffalo Sabres have made the playoffs, it's not exactly the most, player-friendly destination in the NHL. I wouldn't be surprised if the Buffalo Sabres are on those guys' no trade lists. And then, you think about anyone else on the Blackhawks who can go and help that team. Alex Vlasic, I don't think the Blackhawks want to be trading him. Like Frankie Nazar, they don't want to trade that guy. Artem Levshinov, Sam Rinzel. So again, that's where I get to, it sounds good on paper, the Blackhawks getting JJ Purka, but I just don't know if they have a piece that would make sense for Buffalo to go and get in exchange for JJ Purka. But he's definitely the one to keep an eye on over the next week or so.
How about if they keep the pick? Everybody's saying it's Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa as 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. Who do you think the Blackhawks would take if they keep the pick and go at 3?
Yeah, I'm sure they'd love for Michael Misa to fall into their laps at number 3, but I just don't see a world in which that's happening, even though there has been some kind of rumblings from a few NHL anonymous executives saying they prefer Anton Frondell over Michael Misa. To me, I think that's absolutely crazy. For the Blackhawks at 3, I would like to see them go and select James Higgins. I just think he has the highest ceiling and is the best player available at that point. And when you're that high in the draft, I like selecting best player available. And while Artem Levshinov looks really solid, the Blackhawks had an opportunity last year to select Ivan Demidov, and they obviously let him go by. If James Higgins goes and develops into a really special offensive player in this league, I know he's undersized, and the Blackhawks already have a lot of that in their forward group, but it would just be such a tough pill to swallow to pass on both of those guys in back-to-back years. And I personally just think James Higgins has that really special skill set. And if he was playing in the OHL this year instead of the NCAA or playing in a junior league, he would have put up bananas offensive numbers. And I really believe he would be thought of a little differently going into this year's draft. So I'd like to see them go with James Higgins. Doesn't sound like they're leaning that way though, Gil, again, just because I think they do have a lot of undersized players like Bedard and Frank Nazar already in their top 6. So sounds like they're looking with someone with size and skill combination. So I'd be expecting Anton Frondell, Caleb Denoyer, and Porter Martone to really be the 3 players they're diving through. And if it's not going to be James Higgins, I'd like to see it be Porter Martone, but it's probably going to be any of those 3 guys.
All right, trade pulled off over the last week. Andre Burikovski coming to town. What does he add, and where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, I thought this was a really good trade from general manager Kyle Davidson, only giving up Joe Veleno to the Seattle Kraken. And Veleno was someone who was possibly a buyout candidate here for the Blackhawks. Very unlikely he was going to be part of the future. So to go and swap him and bring in Andre Burikovski, who, yeah, he has kind of struggled the last few years with Seattle, but I do think he, again, checks a box the Blackhawks are needing, size and skill combination. He'll provide that and be plugged into the middle 6. Definitely will be an upgrade from what the Blackhawks had in those spots last year. And Burakovsky's big, he's got some good size at 6'3", a decent skater, decent goal scorer. The contract isn't very good, $5.5 million per year for the next 2 seasons. But with where the Blackhawks are at right now and all the room they have financially, like that's nothing to them. So thought this was a good buy low spot on Andre Burikovski. Really didn't cost them anything substantial to go and get him. And, is, again, definitely an upgrade inside the Blackhawks middle 6 on the wing.
You mentioned all that cap space that they have. What is the strategy this offseason? How do you think they use it?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, Gil, because they do have so much room, and there's obviously some notable free agents out there. A guy like Mitch Marner, Nikolai Ehlers, Brock Besser, Sam Bennett potentially leaving Florida. That's going to be a really interesting situation to watch. So they have the money to go and bring in some good help, give Connor Bedard more aid in his development, but I don't think they're necessarily going to be going after the big guns. And I think that's going to be pretty disappointing to a lot of Blackhawks fans out there. I know some of them wanted to go and pursue Mitch Marner. It doesn't really sound like the Blackhawks are expected to be too serious in those discussions. I do think, though, they need to add someone to that top line, whether it's Brock Besser. I would love to go and see Brock Besser added to this forward group because they just need one more piece. I think it would be a big failure of the offseason for, Ryan Donato and Andre Burakovsky, like Donato coming back, bringing in Burikovski. Yeah, those are nice little moves to help this forward group be better, but it's not a true top line add. And the Blackhawks have just been missing that for so long. So I would really like to go and see them make a run at someone like Brock Besser, who can bring in some speed and more skill, help Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar, help their development go as swimmingly as possible. And I really do think it would be a smart move for Kyle Davidson to bring in someone like Brock Besser this summer.
How about the blue line? What is that looking like? And are they looking for help there as well?
Honestly, the blue line is pretty set in store for next season just because they have so many young pieces. The name of the game next year and the name of the game for the Blackhawks rebuild right now is still patience. And Artem Levshinov, Sam Rinzel, Kevin Korchinski, Alex Vlasic, Wyatt Kite, these are all guys who are 24, 23 or younger. And the Blackhawks want those guys to be getting the lion's share of the opportunities out there. The only real veteran that's expected to be on the blue line next season is Connor Murphy, and he's entering the final year of his current deal and has even been part of, minor trade discussions just because, again, the name of the game is patience in the future for the Blackhawks. So it's going to be about giving the kids all the opportunities in the world next year. So blue line's kind of set in store.
Well, going to be
Set
an
in stone.
interesting couple of weeks now in Chicago. I know you'll have it covered every step of the way, Jack. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also check me out on YouTube. And if you want to follow me on socials, you can find me everywhere at Jack Bushman too.
Jack, thanks so much.
Absolutely, Gil. Thanks for having me on. Always enjoy it.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Again, that first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.